talking today about how to use domain names to build a protected brand online. But first I wanted to just do a very quick run through, a quick intro to our organization, what we do. So basically our mission is to help nonprofits, charities and libraries across Canada use technology more effectively. We do this in two ways. The first is our technology donations program. So we basically partner with companies like Microsoft, Adobe, and we connect other nonprofits with their products, their software, as either an outright donation or at a discount. So we're generally, a copy of Office Professional would be around $500 per license. Through TechSoup Canada, nonprofits and charities can get it for $55. So it's a huge cost savings for eligible nonprofits, and it's a way for us to help them save money on technology, to work more effectively through that tech, and to save money that they can now put towards their impact and their mission. And we also do curate tech resources, so we run a blog, we are active on social media, sharing different articles and different resources, all related to simple, easy to understand, and accessible ways to use technology. And we're also part of this organization in this space that we're in now, which is the Center for Social Innovation. And we're a program, and CSI is a networking opportunity. It's a community space for different nonprofits and for-profits doing social good. And we're also part of the TechSoup Global Network. So NetSquared Toronto is one of many different nonprofit technology meetups that occur across the world, different places across Canada and different countries as well. And we are the Toronto branch. And I just want to touch on logistics. If you do want to get online, CSI Guests is our network. There's no password. You just sign right on. If you want to tweet about this event, use the hashtag NetSquaredToronto. And there's also going to be a recording for our webcam and mic available post-event, so you can share it with your colleagues and friends, or just for your own reference afterwards. Also, we have tons of finger food, so please don't be shy. Take as much as you want, especially for those folks who haven't had dinner yet. So before we jump into the event, quickly going to do a little introduction exercise. So just in the pairs that we see here, I wanted you folks to introduce yourselves to one another, just with your name, the organization that you're here with, and then answer the question, so in the context of your professional work, what are you doing right now to build and protect your brand online? So we're going to take a few minutes to have that discussion, and then we're going to get forward with the presentation.
I guess that
Faber received his Bachelor of Business Administration from Bishop's University in Lennoxville, and he's been since working as a digital marketer in many capacities. So he's actually a digital marketer with his alma mater, Bishop's, as well as with the creative agency BVO2. And he's also the marketing manager with the software consultation and training firm Bold Radius. So Jason has a lot of years of experience in online branding and digital marketing. And he's also gone through the efforts to acquire different certifications in inbound marketing. He's got some expertise in Google Analytics, Google AdWords. So these different key areas that are so crucial to the whole industry of digital marketing in general. And currently Jason is now the product marketing manager with the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, which handles the .ca domain and also develops and implements policies that help develop the Canadian internet world in general. And so we're pleased to have Jason with us today to talk to us about how to use domain names to build and protect our brands online. So Jason, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
It looks great.
This is my presentation. Okay. Thank you all for coming out. It's great to see you all, and thank you, Matt, for the introduction, for introducing everyone here. So today we're going to talk about, as I mentioned, domain names and not-for-profits, specifically how to build and protect your brand online using domain names. So as he said, my name is Jason Faber. I work for the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, or better known as CIRA. So has anybody heard of CIRA before, or Canadian Internet Registration Authority besides Matt? Okay, so contrary to popular belief, we're not a government organization, and we're not the Internet Police. What we're best known for is, as Matthew said, managing the .ca domain name on behalf of all of Canada. So there's currently about 2.5 million domain names, .ca domain names registered right now. We are a not-for-profit organization ourselves. We're also a member-driven organization. We have about 15,000 members nationwide. And we have an office in Ottawa with about 85 employees, and that's where I live, so I came down here for the day. And as you see, we have a mandate of building a better online Canada. We do that through our stewardship of the .ca domain name and the registry itself. And through that, through managing the domain name, we're able to invest in different projects and initiatives, like we have a community investment program. We run internet performance tests, and I'll talk a little bit more about those initiatives later on. So I was going to ask everybody, who are you? But we already did a bunch of introductions, so I got a good sense of who you guys are. So I want to understand kind of who works in the not-for-profit space, who works in the tech space. Who here owns their own domain name? Does anybody own their own domain name at all? Yeah? Do you own more than one?
Yes.
Do you own any .cas?
Yes, Ishmael.ca.
And you said you own a domain name as well? How many?
Not.ca.
.ca? Great. So we're here to talk about brands, right? When we look at these, this is what people usually think when they hear the term brand. They think of a logo, they think of colors and all these great things. But really your brand is much more than that, right? It's your reputation. It's the perception that your customers have of you when they think of you, when they see you, when they deal with you, right? It's what they say to their friends about you when you're not around. So while these things all are a major part of a brand is really, really much more than that. I'm going to talk about how your domain name really plays into that brand, especially in the online space. So the core element of a brand is trust, right? So do your customers trust you? Keeping trust is a really hard thing to do, and building it is also really difficult, right? And when we think about trust, I like to think of it, through this trust equation, right? So trust equals credibility plus reliability plus intimacy over self-orientation. So credibility, it's a rational thing, right? It's not easy to measure, but it's usually pretty easy to see and to experience. In the not-for-profit world, as in the business world, credibility is absolutely crucial, right? If you don't have any credibility, then no one's going to want to do business with you. Reliability, right? This is demonstrated by your actions, right? The things that you do. Do you deliver on your promises? When you say you're going to do something, do you follow through on it? And then we have intimacy, right? Can people connect with you, right? This is the emotional part of your brand. So those are the three main parts that equal trust, and then we divide this all by self-orientation, and this is the part that can really destroy trust in your brand altogether. Self-orientation is the extent to which you put yourself first, right? All good brands put their customers first, And if you start putting yourself first all the time, even if you've gained great credibility and reliability and you've created intimate relationships with your customers, if you're self-oriented, you're going to destroy it all. So I really see trust as that cornerstone of branding. And when we talk about domain names, trust is a big part of that as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what domain names are and why do they matter for not-for-profits. So what is a domain name, right? There's a bunch of different phrases that people use for domain names. Some people call it a URL, some people call it a website name or an internet address, but essentially it's this thing right here, right? It's what you type into a browser to get to a website, right? Your domain name, .ca, that's your domain name. It's essentially where your website lives, right? But it's also often your first impression. And it's also kind of a lingering impression, right? It's always kind of there. It doesn't stand out necessarily all the time, but it follows people around when they're on your website. Your domain name's always there. Everything you do online, whether it's tweeting, even offline, right? Coming to events, give them your business card, your domain name's there. So it's really the cornerstone of your brand online, and it's the hub of where your entire brand really, really lives. And with all that said, it's way more important than people think. A lot of people register their domain name and just say, oh yeah, that sounds like a good one, and they just kind of do it without actually thinking it through and how it kind of fits into their whole, not just their online strategy, but their business strategy, right? So from a little bit more of a technical perspective, a domain name is made up of multiple parts, right? So we're all familiar with www. And then we have what's called a top-level domain and a second-level domain. So I use TechSoup.Canada.ca as the example here. So the top-level domain is everything over here to the right of the dot, right? And there's a couple different top-level domains out there. There's what's called a country code top-level domain. So this is .ca represents Canada. There's .uk, .fr for France, .de. There's hundreds of them out there. There's also generic top-level domains. These are called GTLDs. You might have heard of GTLDs and even what's called new GTLDs. These are the .com, .org, .net. And in recent years, there's been about 1,000 new GTLDs come to the market. You might have heard of .xyz, .guru, .sucks, .rocks, .club. There's literally thousands of new TLDs to choose from. So when making your decision about domain name, there's the top-level domain piece, what it's going to end with, and then there's also the second-level domain, right? And this is usually something like your brand name, your organization, your TechSoup.Canada.ca. So that's kind of the anatomy, if you will, of what a domain name, what makes up a domain. And feel free to ask any questions along the way if anyone has them. So we talk about not-for-profits and domain names and what a good domain name can really do for a nonprofit, right? So a good domain name gives you credibility, right? We saw that in the trust equation, how that's a key part of what it means, right? So you need people to trust you online, and a good domain name really does give you that credibility factor. We see, back in the spring, we saw the awful wildfires at Fort McMurray, and one of the things that we saw was amongst, a lot of scams out there, there was lots of online scams, right? People setting up fake websites that were trying to position themselves as, affiliated with Red Cross, and they were ended up scamming people and taking money away from people who actually wanted it. So using this as an example, I want to show you two domain names. I don't know if you can see this bottom one here. These are just hypothetical examples of what a good, trusted, credible domain name looks like versus one that's maybe not so credible. But it's this first one here, right? https://www.redcross.ca/go. That's a pretty good domain name. If you were to see that, you'd likely click on that link. You'd likely trust it, right? What makes it trustworthy, right? So it's clean and it's simple. It's branded, right? We believe that redcross.ca is actually, Red Cross is actually the owner of that domain name. The HTTPS shows that it's secure, especially if I'm donating money, I want to know that my credit card information and all that's going to be secure. And it's got the .ca, which tells me that it's a Canadian organization, it's a Canadian company. If I'm donating money, all that information can be kept here in Canada, I can trust that. Whereas we see the one below, which is one that I totally made up, this isn't actually a real scam, but fort-murray-fire.org / a bunch of characters / Red Cross. So it's clear that this is a brand new website, right? It has Fort McMurray Fire in the name, right? So someone clearly just created this. That's a little bit of a red flag when you see a brand new website like that. That's kind of using those key terms to try to entice you in. There's also typos, right? Fort McMurray is spelled wrong. It's also long and it's complicated, right? So these are some things to look for when you're trying to determine if a domain name is credible or not, or when you're creating your own domain name. Make sure that it's something that's a little bit more trustworthy looking and a little bit more clean and credible. Another piece here that's interesting is .org, right? When you think of .org, what do you think of, right? You think of charitable organization, not-for-profit. And while a lot of nonprofits use .org, anybody can register at .org. There's no specific requirements needed to register at .org. Anyone can get one for whatever reason possible. So just be careful when you're looking at .org, or if you're donating money on .org, that to make sure that the organization is a legitimate organization. And when you have your domain name, there's things that you can do to add even more credibility on top of that, right? So you can protect your domain name. So there's a thing called SSL certificates, and that was the HTTPS piece that we saw here. It adds an added layer of security on your domain name, and it helps protect you, both you as the website owner and your customers, especially if there's money involved in online transactions. And it'll also help you rank better in Google. Google sees this and they say, hey, this website's secure or more secure than another website, so they want to send their visitors to that more secure website. There's also stuff like Registry Lock, which is a product of ours, and it's an added layer of protection which essentially helps your domain from being hijacked. So it just adds that extra level of security so that not anyone can just hack in or hijack your domain. It's a more secure feature. And then with the domain name, you can also do email hosting. I'll talk a little bit more in depth about this later. But you see these two email addresses here that follow the last example, right? FortMacFireDonations@hotmail.com. Are you going to trust sending, answering emails to that domain name, or donations@registrar.ca? So when you have your domain name, it's not just for your website, but you can host emails on it as well, and that just gives you so much more credibility as an organization. Yeah?
Sorry, just going back to the registry lock.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
So it's one of our products that we have, and it's essentially, it just puts an extra lock on top of your domain. So if you want to make any changes, it's a little bit more of a process for you to go through and call our product support team and actually verify that it's you that wants to make, whether it's like an administrative contact change or you want to point it to a different location or a different website, just to avoid someone who's trying to maybe hack your website and move it somewhere else. Does that make sense? Yeah. So a good domain name also allows you to take control and protect your brand, right? When you register your domain name, especially your brand name, nobody else can have it. There's a little asterisk there. No one else can have it as long as you renew it every year and keep it registered. When you get a domain name, you don't actually own the domain name. It's more like you're renting it, right? And it's a year at a time kind of thing. So what happens sometimes is someone registers a domain name, and then after a year they forget to renew, and they let it lapse, and it goes back out to the world, and someone else might register it, and then there's this big issue of, oh, someone has my brand name out there. So when you find a really good domain name and you register it, really make sure you're protecting it and make sure you renew it every year. There's a couple things you can do when you register. You can set up your domain for auto-renew, sort of what you probably have with Spotify or Netflix. You don't want to be reminded every month, just keep my subscription going kind of thing. Or you can register for more than 1 year. You can actually register for up to 10 years at a time. So if you started a company or organization and it's your brand name, I know a lot of people who just registered 10 years right off the bat. I know I'm going to be using this, and you're likely to get a discount as well when you register for 10 years at a time. A great domain name really allows you to connect with your audience online, right? So if you're a Canadian organization, you're likely targeting Canadian consumers, and Canadians are online more than any other country. We did research that showed that it's like 45 hours a month that we're online, and it's more than any other country in the world, and it's actually double the global average. So if your customers are online, you should be online as well, right? It's kind of that whole fish, little fish out of concept. So now that I've kind of gone over, what domain names are and why they're important and how they can really help you, build and protect your brand. How do you choose a great domain name? I'm going to go through a couple tips. So the best domain name, as we said, it's obviously your brand name. If your brand name is available, go register it and keep it for as long as you can. myawesomecherry.ca, great news, go do it. But what if it's already taken, right? You see this a lot with a lot of organizations that, the Canadian blah, 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 and they shorten to an acronym, and there's many organizations out there that have the same acronym, right? So how do you find the right domain name if the one that you really, really, really want is already taken? So think about keywords, right? And when I say keywords, I mean adding additional keywords onto your domain name. We saw that Canadians are online more than any other country. What do most people do when they're looking for you online? Whether they know your brand name or not, a lot of people aren't actually going in and typing your domain name in unless they have it in front of them. They're going to go to this tool called Google, right? And they're going to start typing in some keywords. So when you're thinking about adding keywords to your domain name, think about stuff like locations, right? So TechSoup Canada, for instance, they've added the location Canada on there. Different products or services you might have, right? So smokershelpline.ca is based around that specific service that they offer, or even your tagline or campaign slogan. A lot of organizations, when they launch a big campaign, they'll get a domain name for that campaign specifically and have it on its own website, right? So soberoctober.ca is an example of that. But make sure you don't overcomplicate it, right? You don't want to add 8 or 9 keywords. You don't want to have this big, long domain name that no one's going to remember, right? It should be simple, it should be memorable. And make sure that it's easy to say, so when you're telling someone what your domain name is, make sure it's easy to spell, so when they go to type it in, they know how to spell it. And then it's easy to remember. As I said, try to avoid really long domain names. And if you have a really long brand name, sort of like what we do, Canadian Internet Registration Authority, use your acronym, but only if people know you by that acronym, and only if there's not another bunch of organizations out there that share the same acronym as you specifically, right? People know us as CIRA, and CIRA.ca is a great domain name for us. It's 7 characters long, and it's easy. Try to avoid dashes and numbers if possible. Sometimes people put dashes between words. This works, but it's a little bit confusing. It's hard to remember for people. And numbers as well. People don't know if you mean the letter, or sorry, the number or the full word. So if you do have a number in your business name, register both versions, right? Register both the version of the 2 and the 2 TWO. This just helps you protect your brand to avoid losing any traffic. It's a really good strategy to have. One example of this is a really great organization, which I love, which is fantastic. It's called Cars for Kids. You guys know Cars for Kids? So essentially what you do is, let's say I have an old beater car that I want to get rid of. I could donate my car to Cars for Kids, and then they would sell it for parts and make $300-400. And that money would go towards, kids' charities and stuff like that, and I would get a cash receipt for that. So it's a really great way, for me to get rid of my car, but also to support a great organization. But their domain name is cars with a K, the number 4, kids.org. And every time I see it, I'm just reminded how challenging that must be for them to have to specify that every time, and then for someone to remember that. So that's just an example of one that you might want to look out for if you're looking at getting a domain name. Consider typos and common misspellings, right? Here in Canada, we see this one all the time, right? Center or center, and people use both versions interchangeably all the time. And there's actually a lot of nonprofits that have the word center in their domain name. So again, right, if you see this issue a lot, register both versions of the domain name and just have one point to the other. And I'll explain what that means and how to do that later on. Again, this just helps you avoid losing any traffic to your site. It helps you really protect your brand online. If you registered your brand name with this version of center but didn't get that one, someone else can get that one, right? And capitalize on getting that traffic. And all this kind of builds up this concept of building a domain portfolio, right? Having this portfolio of multiple domain names. And this is a really common strategy for most businesses online and not-for-profits as well, right? We see the Canadian Cancer Society has done an awesome job at this. They've managed to get cancer.ca, which is a fantastic domain name, right? It's easy, it's simple, you know exactly what it is, you know it's Canadian, it's short, it's sweet, you can tell it to anybody and they'll remember it. They also have Canadian Cancer Society.ca. And that points to this website, right? So if you type that in, you'll automatically redirect to cancer.ca. They also have other projects and initiatives and products. So they have relayforlife.ca that points back, copsforcancer.ca that points back. So they've built this portfolio of domain names around their initiatives and their programs, and they point it back to their main website. But then they also have these other standalone sites, right? So they have Smokers Helpline, cancerconnection.ca, soberoctober.ca, and they decided to make these their own websites as well. So they're really capitalizing on their entire brand, not just their brand names, but also the different campaigns and services that they have. This is a really, really smart strategy, and they're one of the best ones that I've seen that does a really good job of this. I know you're thinking, doesn't this become really expensive, right? I'm buying all these domain names, and I have a portfolio, and I'm pointing them everywhere and all this stuff. And the short answer really is no, right? We hear these stories about such and such.com got sold for $100,000 last year, and domain names are so expensive, and that stuff does happen, but that's on the secondary market oftentimes, right? Someone's registered a .com domain name to make money, right? They're holding on to it, and they want to sell it to make those tens or $100,000. When you register a domain name from scratch, so one that's available, it doesn't cost anywhere near that, but there's still this perception that it's just this really, really, really expensive thing to do. we do research every year, and we talk to Canadian internet users, and we asked them how much they thought a domain name cost for a year, and they thought it was $130 a year, which is 10 times more than what a domain name actually costs. This year, the .ca on average sold for $12 per year. So it's way, way cheaper than people think it is. And with certain promotions, they can be as cheap as $1.99 for the year. You really just kind of have to shop around and look for different deals and stuff like that. And there's even some of our registrars, which is the company that sells the domain names, that offer specific deals for registered charities and nonprofits. So when you're looking at registering domain names, really shop around and look at prices and look at different deals and promos that are out there. And it's not going to cost you $100,000 to build a portfolio of domains. Unless there's one out there that you really, really, really want that someone's holding on to, that's the only time you're going to pay a decent amount of money for a domain name. And at the same time, if you're buying 10 or 15 domain names to protect your brand at once, a lot of registrars offer bulk pricing, right? They say, okay, it'll be $12 a year for one, but if you're buying 15, I'll give it to you for $9 a year. And if you're registered for more than 1 year at a time, same thing. You can really save some money by adding that longevity onto your domain. At the end of the day, it's all about thinking about all the different touch points of your brand online and really protecting all those terms in the sense of a domain name. And I know we were talking about personal domains earlier. It's the same thing, right? Like owning your name online, whether it's .ca or .com or whatever, it's so important to do that. I bought jasonfaber.ca when I was in high school, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just held on to it until I was ready to forward it to my LinkedIn profile and then finally build a website. So make sure you get it before someone else does. This is important.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was searching, looking at the .com or .ca, if it existed already. It doesn't. But so how many different versions should you get? So if a person's name is, and they have a nickname, or that's...
Yeah, when it comes to personal branding, it's I would definitely say if you can get your name, first name, last name, I would register it right away and keep it.
Yeah.
Your last name alone, if you need your last name alone too, that's really cool too, because then you can, we saw email hosting, so if I own Faber.ca, which I don't, it's already taken by an insurance company, then I could host emails for everybody in my family, right? I could host Jason at Faber.ca, I could host Ryan at Faber.ca for everyone in my family, which is a pretty cool thing to do. But it all depends on what you're trying to do with it and how much money you really want to spend too, right? So maybe if you're in a certain industry, get domain names with keywords around that industry. I looked at getting jasonfaber.marketing. .marketing is actually one of the new top-level domains. It was pretty expensive. It's a lot more expensive than .ca. A lot of the new GTLDs are expensive. I think it was like $65 a year. I didn't get it because of that, but there's a lot of different options out there in terms of what kind of keywords you can use and how to register the domains. But I would definitely say get your name and your business name if you can.
Just get an uncommon name and an advantage.
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah. The more generic your name is, the tough luck. So why choose .ca for domain name? And I know we talked a little bit about the trust equation and self-orientation, so I'm kind of playing with that a little bit, but I really do think that .ca is really important for Canadian charities and nonprofits, and I'll tell you why. So first of all, .ca brands your website as 100% Canadian, right? Right off the bat, people can tell that it's a Canadian company, Canadian organization, and it just adds that level of trust and familiarity, right? We always say, think of the .ca on your website like that Canada flag on your digital backpack, right? You're going around Europe and other Canadians, even other people recognize that, and they have that kind of, they smile and they have that sense of familiarity with you. Canadians also love the .ca domain name. So that research I was talking about earlier, we asked them a bunch of different questions about their use online of different websites, and 83% of people said that they prefer using Canadian websites over any others. So there's this real big preference towards people when they have the option to go the .ca route. The .ca is safe, it's secure, and it's trusted. So we've been running it for over 20 years, so it's not this brand new top-level domain that's been out there. We've, over time, we've really kind of built our credibility by showing that we can, run a really good registry. And not only do Canadians prefer to use and support Canadian websites, but they're also more likely to perform online transactions on their .ca. think donations, right? When someone sees a .ca, they know they're going to be charged in Canadian dollars. Especially when you think about if you're buying something online, you're not going to pay duties and taxes, you're not going to pay crazy shipping, and you know that your money and that your credit card information is kind of staying local. So it kind of ties back to that Canadian aspect of it. The .ca can help you perform better in a Canadian internet search. So what a .ca domain name does is, because it signifies Canada, it tells Google that your site is Canadian, right? And then Google turns around and says, okay, so since this site is Canadian, it's more likely to be relevant to people who are searching in that location, in Canada, right? And then on top of that, since we see that Canadian internet users have a preference for .ca, when they see a .ca listing in a search, they're more likely to click through on that because they know that it's probably more relevant to them, right? If I'm in Toronto and I'm searching, how to adopt a puppy, I'm going to be looking for something that's more local to where I am. I'm not going to look for, an animal shelter in Alabama, let's say, right? So the .ca can not only help you rank a little bit higher in certain cases, but can also help you attract more clicks in a Google search. So the .ca is more likely to be available, right? We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier with how unique is your name and all this stuff. But since there's only 2.5 million .ca domain names registered, I know that sounds like a lot, but it's really not. It's more likely that the domain name you want is available in a .ca than it is in other extensions. So anyone want to guess how many .coms are registered right now?
400 million.
Oh, not that high. 125 million. 125 million .coms are currently under registration. So if you go to look for a domain name, it's far more likely that it's going to be available in the .ca than it is in the .com. So we've got lots of .cas up here.
Can you trust if you're doing a search with a company or someone on .com that it is available? They're saying that it's available.
So yes, but I think it depends where you're doing a search too, right? We're the .ca registry, right? So you can go to our site and search only for .ca domain names.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's companies that are called registrars, and they're the actual ones that sell the domain names. So a lot of them sell, .ca, .com, .net, the whole gamut of them. So if you're on a good trusted registrar's website, I would say that yes, it is available. But without knowing what site you're on, it's hard to tell.
So if you're on you go to your site.
We will only show you .ca.
But you're not a registrar?
We're not a registrar, so we're the registry. So we own the database of all the .ca domain names that are registered and available for registration.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you buy a domain name, it gets sold through our channel of registrars, so through a reseller.
So essentially, if I remember correctly, so you go to your site, you choose a domain, it's like CIRA determines its availability.
Yeah, we run it against the registry. We say,
then when you check out, you choose which registrar to go.
yeah, so we have a whole group. I think we have 100 and some odd registrar partners that we work with. So when you do a search on our site, let's say Matthew.ca, it's not available like that, but let's say it was, we'd say, hey, congratulations, it's available. Buy it now with one of our trusted registrars, and we'll give you a list of different companies that we work with that you can click on and shop around and see if they have what you want and if the price is right and all those sorts of things. But we don't sell direct. We sell through our channel. Yeah.
I have a question on the live stream chat.
Yeah.
So someone is asking, our .org domain is registered with Network Solutions domain, an email and website hosted by Bell, but we've had spoof problems. Bell suggested registering with spfwizard.net also. Is that a normal thing?
I don't know anything about that, but Network Solutions is a registrar. I would suggest they talk to their registrar about that. That goes a bit beyond what I know about the technical aspects of the domain space.
I also have a question just for
Yeah.
myself. This is related though. How do you know, we've been talking about trust and .cas, how does CIRA know that whoever's registering is Canadian? Or how does Google have google.ca? Do they have to
So they would have a Canadian office. So they
Okay.
likely have an office. I think they have an office in Montreal, but I think they probably also have an office here. But we have a whole compliance program. So we have a team of people that every single day when we get new registrations in, and it's in the thousands a day, it gets vetted through a process, and we make sure that everyone actually has Canadian. We have a whole set of Canadian presence requirements.
physical presence, not just
Physical
care about
presence,
Canadian customers?
Yeah, exactly. We have a ton of people from California trying to register domain names, .ca domain names, and we have to reject them all. So our registrations come in and they go down because we reject a lot of people because they don't have those Canadian presence requirements, which is a really core part of our brand, right? Because everyone knows CA as Canadian, right? So we really put a lot of effort in making sure that the person or the organization actually has either they have an office or based here, they have citizenship in Canada. Yeah. So .ca also gives back, right? So as a not-for-profit ourselves, we reinvest money that we make on every .ca domain name back into the Canadian internet community. We have this program called the Community Investment Program. We launched in 2014, and since then we've contributed $3.3 million to 78 projects across Canada, about 25 projects a year, and it's all projects based on, to really help us build a better online Canada. So stuff like digital literacy, online services, research, internet infrastructure. We funded a project last year that it was a mobile app that helped, it tied into Google's API, and it helped the blind navigate the streets based on the Google's API. We also helped get better internet connectivity in rural communities, and so stuff like that. So every time you purchase a .ca domain name, part of the proceeds of what we make goes right back into funding this program and donating millions of dollars back into the Canadian
What part?
internet. Sorry,
Percentage.
I don't know what the exact percentage is, but it's about $1 million a year. $1.1 million. Yeah, it's been 3 years now, and 3.3 million we've invested so far. So it's just over $1 million a year.
So what's your total revenue going to be for registrations?
I don't know what our revenue is. Canadian not-for-profits also really enjoy choosing .ca. We did a study last fall with 400 Canadian nonprofits, and 53% of them had a .ca website themselves. Not surprisingly, 25% of them had .org, because we kind of know that nonprofits and charities like the .org domain name. And further research showed that 85% of Canadian users, internet users, prefer using .ca over .com and getting involved in the community and these types of organizations. We talked about .org. You don't really have to have any kind of requirements to get a .org domain name, so anyone can kind of get them. So we see a lot of not-for-profits in Canada who are targeting Canadians going CA. So how do you register a domain name, right? Like, where do you go and how do you do it and how do you know if it's legit, right? So I like to say it's as easy as 1, 2, 3. It might not always feel this easy, but it really is, right? So first step is to search for the domain, right? So you need to go to our website and search to see if your domain is available, or you can go to a registrar's website and do some searches there as well. If it's available, awesome, go to step 2. If not, try to find a domain name that's good for your brand, that you love, that's also available, right? The second step, when you're on our website, is to choose a registrar, right? So Registrar is the online retailer where you buy your domain name and other related products and services like email hosting, website hosting, some of them have website builders, stuff like that. So choosing the right registrar is a pretty important part of the process. You want to make sure that you have a good level of trust with them. All the ones that we offer on our site are all very trusted. They've gone through our whole process. But make sure they have the right products and services for you, right? Make sure they offer what you need. Check out some different prices. See if they have good customer support. Just kind of do your due diligence there, because they're the company that you're going to have the most face-to-face time with. So really make sure that you do some research when you're looking at registrars.
How do I change my registrar?
How do you change your registrar? So if you're unhappy with your registrar, you would have to, I think you do that through your registrar, or if you want to transfer to a new one, you can initiate the transfer with the new one. And you just need to get the authorization code, and then you can transfer it across. And I think it depends on who you do it with, but it costs a fee, and I'm pretty sure it automatically renews your domain for a year. So if you're unhappy with your registrar, I would go find a new registrar, and then ask them, hey, I want to transfer such and such domain to you, and they'll help you out. And then the third step is just to register the domain. It's pretty simple. It's like any other online transaction. Just entering your credit card information. Make sure that you register your domain name yourself. I recommend not letting someone else do it for you. We see a lot of times people, they hire a web firm or agency that registers the domain name, and then 10 years down the road, the person wants their domain name, and the agency has pulled it up and gone away, and they don't actually own their own domain name, right? So make sure you own it yourself, and you keep it secure. Keep good passwords, and make sure you're renewing it every year.
Does CIRA have a rating system for their registrars?
No, we don't. We treat all of our registrars equal.
But they're not equal.
Well, it depends what you're looking for. Depends what you're looking for.
Okay.
So we do have filtering on our site. So if you need certain services, or you want service in French, or you want the ability to have website builder built in, you can filter our search by those criteria. But we recommend that you do some shopping around and read some reviews and go look at what they offer and what you feel.
What's a good site for reviews of registrars? Without my going to.
I don't know one, to be totally honest with you.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I would ask around, right? Other people that you know that work in the web or have domain names. Ask who their registrar is and if they're happy with them. And
Okay.
yeah, there's a lot of good ones out there. There's a lot of good ones, and there's a lot of local ones too. There's a lot based in Canada, and there's a few based in Toronto as well. Yeah. So you have this domain name, right? You've registered it, pat yourself on the back, and what's next, right? And this is where a lot of people really get stuck, and they get a little frustrated because the answer I'm going to give you is to build a website, and that's terrifying to most people. It's easier said than done. The word build is a little bit misleading here. Not many people are going off and actually building their own website from scratch with HTML and everything. While there's people who have those skills who do that every day, not everyone does, and hiring people can be really expensive and time consuming. So when you think about building a website, there's that route, hiring somebody, which can be really expensive, or there's a ton of different options out there. You've probably heard of some of these. These are all website building tools. They all have their different features and fortes, but essentially they're all easy to use, they're all affordable, they all are pretty much based on themes or templates. You pick a theme or template that you like, and then it's customizable, right? You build it out from there. It's a lot more affordable than hiring an agency or a developer. Depending on which one you go with, they typically cost anywhere between $10 and $25 a month, or sorry, a year. A month. So again, like you with registrars, if you're trying to build a website with one of these tools, do your research, make sure that it offers what you need, make sure it has the flexibility that you need. And some of our registrars actually have their own either proprietary built-in tools, or they offer a Weebly plugin, so that when you register your domain name with them, you can also get Weebly through them, and so you're kind of just dealing with one company rather than having your registrar with your domain here and your website here and your hosting here. A lot of people like to kind of have it all in one place, and we're seeing more and more of our registrars are kind of offering that full service package of website, email, domain, hosting, all that kind of stuff.
Is there any Canadian host, I guess you call it?
Hosting company, probably. I mean, Shopify and PageCloud are both Canadian companies. I don't know who they do their hosting through, and I don't know how the registrars do their hosting if they manage the hosting themselves. That's a good question to ask your registrar when you're looking at getting hosting.
The reason I asked that, Jason,
Yeah.
might be listening to other people, is I was at Yahoo for day one of my registrations, and as you know, Yahoo is now being Yahooed out of pretty much existence, and Alibaba and the 40 whatever now own part of it. And so I wondered if you knew of a host in Canada that's on par with what Yahoo used to be.
I can find out for you. If you need your card, we can chat for sure. But I totally get where you're coming from with that. Yeah, it's important to keep local. So yeah, so all these tools are for the most part really easy to use. It really depends on what you're looking for. And again, they're really affordable. But if you are looking for something a little bit more custom built, with a little bit deeper functionality, there's nothing wrong with hiring a web agency or a development firm. It is going to cost you more money. It's going to take a bit more time, but you're going to get exactly what you want. So again, it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you're really low cost, you're looking to get started up like that, I'd suggest looking into some of these because they're really great. So if you're going with any of those platforms or with a firm, whichever route you take, there's some key considerations to think about, right? So the first is cost, right? What is this thing going to cost me now and in the future? Right? A lot of times when you hire an agency, it might cost you $20,000 today, but it kind of just maintains itself moving forward unless you want to add stuff on. Whereas the website builders, it's usually a monthly or a yearly fee. You need to consider that you need to keep paying that fee year over year to keep your website going, right? So really think about what the cost that you want to pay is. Is it easy to use, right? If you're going with a templated website builder, do you have someone in-house or yourself, are you able to actually manage this thing? Or do you need to hire someone to manage it for you? That might defeat the purpose, right? And a lot of them are really easy to use. I've used Wix and Weebly recently, both of them, and it's drag and drop. If you want to add a blog section to your website, you can do it. If you want to change anything in your site, you just go click in and edit it. You don't need to put in a ticket and a service request to get someone to change the H1 tag on, whatever. So they're usually quite easy to use, but make sure you're comfortable with the platform that you choose and you have someone that can actually do it in-house so that you can make changes kind of on the fly. Make sure it's mobile friendly, right? More than ever, people are using mobile devices, and even more than that, people are using mobile devices to do some shopping and to pay for stuff online. And Google takes how mobile friendly your site is into account as well. So most of these tools, if not all of them, have responsive design and are mobile friendly. But really make sure that whatever website you build, that it is able to be accessed on a bunch of different devices, whether it's an iPhone or a Samsung tablet or a big screen like this. Hosting, right? I haven't really talked about hosting too much, but if we think of your domain name as the address where your website lives, hosting is the house, right? So this is where you store your website and all of its files. And you need hosting to have your website live. A lot of these tools, these platforms, so Wix and Weebly and all those, they have hosting built in, which is one of the great benefits of them. You don't have to go find a third-party hosting company. Again, it's just kind of keeping all of your services all bundled together in one section. And a lot of our registrars, in fact, most of them also offer website hosting too. So if you want to host a website, if you bought a domain name, you can probably also get hosting, email, website builder, all kind of in one package. And sometimes they're friendly and they bundle it together and give you, 1 year free on your domain name, or a discount or something like that if you're buying more than one product. Is it flexible and scalable, right? So if you want to grow your website in the future, and like I said, if you wanted to add a blog a year down the line, or if you wanted to add some different functionality, can you do that? Or are you hard-coded into this specific structure of, well, this is what every page looks like, right? So envision not only what you want to have today, but what you might want to have next year or 5 years down the road. Because if it's not flexible and scalable, that can end up costing you a lot more money in the future. And again, a lot of those tools, they aren't very flexible and scalable, which makes them really, really attractive to use. And even ones, I think it's Weebly, you're not stuck with the template that you choose. You can swap in templates as much as you want. So if you're a year in, you're using one template, you can just say, I want to get that other template instead, and they just swap it all out. You might need to change the content a bit for it to work, but it is quite flexible in that sense. Also consider integration options, right? So are there any third-party tools that you're going to want to link in with your website? So I'm thinking Google Analytics, right? That's pretty basic. Or if you have a CRM or some sort of donation platform, right? Does the tool that you're going to want to use in the third-party tool, does it fit in with your website? So that's a really important piece to keep in mind. And of course, there's always customer support, right? If you're choosing one of these tools, make sure that they have a customer support team that you can get in touch with via chat or email or on the phone. There's real people there. Because, at the end of the day, you're probably going to run into some issue where you can't figure something out, and it's always good to have a real person to talk to. And that's true, again, with registrars. A lot of our registrars have really, really great customer service and customer support, because this world is kind of confusing, and it gets kind of technical sometimes, so it's good to have some really good customer service there to help you navigate those waters. Just looking back to the online donations piece, because this is really important, especially for this space, right? And while most not-for-profits want to be able to accept donations online, it's not always easy to do it, and it's definitely not as easy as this, right? You can't put a box out and people throw a bunch of money into it. That survey we did, that I mentioned earlier, when we surveyed 400 Canadian nonprofits, I was actually astonished that 85% of them had some means of collecting money online. So while they're less advanced on having a mobile-friendly site, they're definitely got it down to the fact where a lot of Canadian nonprofits actually have some sort of online donation tool set up. And just if anyone's interested, about half of them use a tool called Canada Helps, which seems to be a very popular and trusted tool, and I've seen it on the TechSoup website as well.
Could you repeat the name?
It's called Canada Helps. I don't know if they're a partner of yours, or I've seen blog posts about it. And,
they're a member.
Yeah, so they're a member.
Regardless, we just work closely with them on different initiatives, but
yeah,
they're just a great platform for accepting donations. They have a very fair split.
And they're Canadian too, which is great.
Canadian.
So
Reputation.
Yeah, over half the people we surveyed have to use that.
So they're similar to GoFundMe?
They do actually. They do host. They do but they have a cloud funding platform as well, so they do actually host those kind of initiatives. But they also, part of their brand is giving different websites the capability of accepting donations. So registration forms, collecting and handling credit cards.
Tax receipts, stuff
Yeah,
like
exactly.
that.
Yeah, automated tax receipts and that sort of thing. So they do both.
And there's Canada Helps.
Canada helps. Yeah.
.org, it's an org.
Is it? I don't know. I'm not sure.
It's a
They should that's it. So yeah, about just over half of organizations use Canada Helps, and about 15% of others use PayPal, and 15% had some sort of custom built tool to use. So I just thought that was interesting information on this front. And again, right, your domain name, what's that question? What's next? It's not just about a website, but I really urge you again, get a custom email address, right? Donate at yourcharity.ca. It's credible. It's professional. Get rid of that Hotmail or that @simpatico.ca, email that you have, because no one's going to trust that. No one's going to take you seriously. It's not professional. It's not credible. So I really urge you to set up your own email on your domain. It's not difficult to do. Your registrar will gladly help you set it up. It's not expensive either. As I said, if you're packaging all this stuff together, hosting, email, website, domain, it becomes a lot more manageable to afford. And also, if you're a TechSoup member, I know that TechSoup members get email address set up for free through Google Nonprofits and Microsoft 365, I believe. So there's lots of options for getting your email set up, getting something nice and professional like this. And not just one email address, right? You can set up email addresses for your whole team, right? Jason at yourcharity.ca, Matthew at yourcharity.ca. So yeah, it kind of brings your brand full circle with your website, and especially if you're emailing, asking people to volunteer, get involved, or to donate. It goes a long way rather than a Hotmail address, right? So just kind of like linking it all back together, domain names, not-for-profits. I really urge you to go out there and choose a domain. Choose a domain that's right for you, or multiple domains. Go out there and register it. Protect it in the right ways. Register for multiple years. Make sure it's secure. And use the domain. I can't stress this part enough. So many people register a domain and do nothing with it. Use your domain to its full potential. It's a really, really powerful tool. Build a website, get your email set up. It will really help you, expand your brand and really launch it to the next level online. And of course, choose your .ca domain. I highly encourage it. It brands your website as 100% Canadian, and if you're marketing to Canadian consumers, it's the only way to go. Questions?
Is there any specific difference between choosing .ca or .com or .org in terms of security, like the protecting your domain part or hijacking, or is it just kind of like you're more likely to get hacked if you choose .com because everyone's like trying randomly to do .com?
I would say no, there's no difference in that sense. I think it really depends on what you're doing with your domain and probably what your domain name is. Some domain names might be, regardless of what the extension is, some domain names might be more attractive to be hacked, whether it's a more popular site. I know a lot of hackers go after cities or big companies and try to take them down, news sites, that kind of stuff. But as far as I know, there's no security difference in terms of getting hijacked from your domain.
But that depends pretty much on the host, the security of the host, isn't it?
It can depend on a few things. It can depend on the host, but it can also depend on how you set up your domain as well, right? If you have a really weak password with your registrar or things like that, you could be opening yourself up to be hacked as well, right?
WordPress. If you don't update WordPress,
Yeah.
allow.
Yeah. Sir.
What's the worst security breach you've ever encountered?
I don't work on the security side of things. I don't know off the top of my head. I do. This isn't really a security breach, but I do know that the Dallas Cowboys forgot to renew their domain name and it
That's
expired
right, somebody bought it, yeah.
the day before, and the next day they announced a new coach, and everyone was trying to go to their website, and someone had bought it for like $10. But I had to go through a whole thing to get it back. And
You made some money.
probably. So yeah, I can't urge enough to make sure you renew your domain name. Your registrar will send you emails, like you'll get emails from both them and us saying, hey, your domain name is expiring in 30 days, you should take care of this. But, yeah.
And I'm sure these folks know that even if you're registered with a particular company, you'll be getting bills in the mail from all kinds of companies saying, pay your bill. People don't know your registrar. Your work man.
What do you mean, sorry?
Well, I receive regularly missives urging me to pay my registration fee for my domain names. I've got maybe 10 or 12 of them.
Okay. Like in the mail?
Email.
Email, okay, yeah. And it's not from your registrar?
It's not from my registrar.
It sounds like some sort of spam or phishing scam or something, yeah.
I don't think it's really spam. I think it's some other company that they say, okay, if this guy is careless enough to pay me, I will register.
Yeah, I mean, anyone can send you a bill for anything, right? It depends if you want to pay the cost.
But it happens, it's been happening for 10, 12 years. So,
It happens, happens regardless. Like when I first started at TechSoup, the second my email was on our domain, like I instantly started receiving emails like with an invoice. Like I get 3 a day, something being like, "You owe me $100." It's just like, alright, but yeah, so that's always a risk.
I've got one, so before.
you have to.
Yeah, just in general, just be careful with emails you're getting, right? Especially if it's connected to your domain. Make sure it's actually coming from your registrar or from someone like CIRA, and if you're unsure, call us or call your registrar, right? We have a full product support team that's there for that kind of stuff, and so do registrars too. So when in doubt, call. Yeah.
Any reason why you wouldn't, so if you find out your second level is available, any reason why you wouldn't do .com, .ca, .net, whatever?
You get them all, right? Like if you're
It's
really
just
looking at
cost.
fully, yeah, it's cost at that point, right? I talk to small businesses all the time that say, well, I'm not really focused locally in Canada. I'm looking to expand, and .com's right for me. And I'm like, absolutely, that's fine. If you like, .com makes sense. It's commercial, it's business. Get the CA as well from a brand protection standpoint because you are based here in Canada, right? So it depends on how much money you want to spend and how far you want to go. If I wanted JasonFaber.marketing, I could go buy it, but it's $65, so I'm kind of on the fence. Yeah, again, it's.
But if you have them, what's it cost to have them pointed to your main?
It depends on your registrar. Your registrar will handle that, and I know some of them do it for free. I'm not sure if some of them charge to do that, but to redirect a domain name, I know some of them do it for free.
Do you have a top.ca would be at your top of your list? What would be the?
Well, I'm pretty biased, obviously,
Yeah.
but it depends what you're looking to do,
Yeah.
right? So it's all domain extensions have their benefits and their pitfalls, right? It depends on how you want to rank yourself, really, and with the new GTLDs too, they're really cool and they're fun, but other people might not know what it is, right? So .beer is one of the new GTLDs out there, and I was at the LCBO with a friend, and one of the cams said, I can't remember what the name of it was, but it said the brand name .beer, and I was like, oh, that's cool. He goes, what does that even mean? It's like, it's their website. He's like, it is? Like, where's the .com? Like, he didn't get that it was the domain name, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big problem that people have. Even, booking.com, have you seen their website, booking.yeah? People think that that's their domain name, but .yeah is not a domain name extension. So everyone's trying to go to Google, going to booking.yeah, and they're not going anywhere because booking.com is the actual domain name for them. So it's really about how you want to present yourself, and I would just say, explore your options and see what's out there. But the new GTLDs are definitely more expensive because they're brand new, right? They're trying to make revenue. .com, .org, .net, .ca, they're probably all mostly under $15 per year. Is what you're looking to spend. And again, there's always promotions on for all of them, so kind of look around and do some shopping. Sign up for newsletters with registrars because they'll have flash sales and whatever, that kind of stuff.
May I ask, do you have, does TechSoup have any relationships with registrars?
We do. We have a GoDaddy actually in our catalog as a donor partner, and they offer a bundle deal. I can't remember the price that it would be off the top of my head, but it's basically they have like a website builder. give you a register, like they will register your domain name, and then they also have this program of theirs that sort of helps disperse your brand in the web, and sort of helps get your brand.
I mean, they have like a time with like a suite of other online tools. So
Yeah.
there might be like a tie with like Google AdWords credits.
Yeah, exactly. And
that kind of stuff.
So
Yeah.
it's a bulk offer. So I mean, I encourage you to go on our site and check it out.
Yeah.
And if all those things that they offer are down your alley and it's what you need, go for it. But if you're just registering a domain name, it's not how you say so. But yeah.
How does search engine optimization fit into all this?
So that's a really interesting question because search engine optimization is really complicated. The top level domain is a really tricky part of that, right? And when I talked about how a CA can help you perform better in a search, it's more about Google saying, okay, so this website's Canadian, so I'm going to give it some preference in general terms in a Canadian search. And Canadian consumers are more likely to visit Canadian websites, right? So it doesn't necessarily help you rank higher, but it'll help you get more traffic theoretically from those options. When you're looking at some of the new GTLDs, or there's what's called city GTLDs, so like .nyc or .london, Google has said that they don't yet take those into account if you're based in those locations. So it's less, from what I understand, it's less about it'll help you rank higher, whereas it's more about it'll help your click-through rates more. And as you get more click-throughs and people spend more time on your site, then Google will ultimately deem, okay, for those keywords, this site is more relevant and push you off.
The algorithm.
It's a giant algorithm that they don't totally tell you everything about. But in terms of your domain name strategy, in terms of keywords, I would think more about everything before the dot. So the second level domain piece, that's where you want to have some of your real keywords. And again, not too many. Like don't be too literal and stuff them in there, but think about keywords when you're doing that.
So I'm not sure if you can answer this question, but let's say mycharity.com is taken.
Yeah.
And that's the name that I was hoping to get. And the site is either not really being used or it was and it hasn't been updated in a long time, but it's still there. So I then have to make a choice between mycharity.ca or my-charity.com, let's say.
Sure.
Which is actually better because like the advice I've heard is don't go for mycharity.ca because no one will find you.
In what context, right? So like if you're in the States, people, I mean, they can find you if they Google, like you can still get found in a search with a CA in the States, but in Canada you'll absolutely get found. But yeah, you won't get deemed less important to Google for having a CA over .com. It's actually, I would say it's the reverse in that sense if you're getting found here in Canada. But if someone's not doing anything with it, you could try to buy it from them, but it might be expensive.
It's actually pretty alarming, especially with mobile. When you do, it knows your locations. When you do Google searches,
if you're logged into
it's
Google,
often hard to find stuff that's not Canadian content,
yeah.
or at least Toronto content.
Yeah, and you can notice, like, if you're ever logged into YouTube or Gmail or anything, Google knows everything that you've done, really, right? So, like, if I were to go, like when I got here today, I went on Google Maps and to look up where this place was, and I could see certain locations that were like highlighted, and I'm like, that's weird. That's the church that I got married at, and that's the whatever, because it knows that I've searched for those locations before. So it's giving me context to where I'm going. It's sort of creepy, but it's also really fascinating, right? Like they're using that data to. They're in the business of relevancy, right? Like they want to give you the best, most relevant result possible. So if you're looking for something in Canada and they know their sites.ca, they're going to give you that result more often than one that's not, theoretically.
Actually, if you want to know who you really are, ask Google.
Yeah, exactly. Who am I?
So we have a security conscious person on the
Okay.
chat. So I want to ask a little bit more about this registry lock feature
Yeah.
and SSL. How prevalent is that in use? Do a lot of people use that, or is it kind of like over?
I don't know off the top of my head how many customers we have with Registry Lock. It's not on the products that I work on. I could find out, and I'm pretty sure we probably have some information on our website about like certain customers that use it, and maybe some case studies. So I could find a link. In terms of SSL certificates, it's a pretty widely used thing across the web, especially in e-commerce or anything that deals with credit card information.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other questions at all?
So yeah,
Yeah.
Let's just see what I'm talking about here. Right, so I basically did the, privatizing my contact information when I registered my domain
Okay.
for my own personal usage. What I'm wondering is for something like a charity, is that actually something that's necessary? I mean, I'm assuming that's why, for example, this gentleman was getting bills from different places because they can actually see who owns the domain. But is that something that the charities actually should list publicly versus having it privately listed?
Like your who is contact?
Yeah.
I'm not
Yes,
sure.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we connect an email? I can connect with our product support team because it's a good question. I
Maybe I can contribute a partial answer, please. Some hosts that are registrars will permit you to, for a fee of course, conceal your name and address. But I keep wondering who obviously has all that information, and that's open, as far as I know.
Yeah, and I mean, when I registered my first domain, I just did it private just because that
Yeah.
sounds like a good idea back
Yeah.
then. So, and I just continued paying the small fee every year. But it says ICANN is changing the way that that's now handled by domains or by registrars. So it just made me think about, I don't actually know what this is doing.
Right. Yeah, let me
So-
get a better answer for you because
Okay.
I don't know exactly.
But even if you have your name private and pay the fee, you can still get the email from different people because you've got your domain is not
Right.
private.
That's true.
Right. Any other questions at all? Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to email me.
Tell you, Jason, I'm glad I made this trip here.
Good. Yeah.
Really?
Thanks for coming.
Excellent.